Hello and good afternoon from Jakarta. Welcome to today's FPCI-GRIPS Virtual Public Forum on managing stability in a rough sea, maritime security, blue economy, and connectivity. I am Joycelyn, and I will be the master of ceremony for today's event. This public forum is brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia and the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, GRIPS Japan, and is the first forum of this year's FPCI-GRIPS Virtual Public Forum series. Today, I am pleased to welcome over 300 participants from across 26 countries tuning into our channels. Welcome to those coming in from Indonesia, Japan, the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, and many more. Please welcome our panelists today. Bapak Leonardo Tugu Sambodo, Deputy for Food Affairs, Natural Resources and Environment at Indonesia's Ministry of National Development Planning. Professor Richard Hadrian, Senior Lecturer of the Asian Center of the University of Philippines. Professor Kentaro Furuya, Professor at GRIPS Japan. Dr. Yusuke Takagi, Associate Professor at GRIPS Japan, and the moderator Calvin Ko, Executive Secretary and Coordinator of Research and an Analyst at FPCI. To begin, let us invite Ambassador Masato Watanabe, Project Professor at GRIPS, to deliver his opening remarks. Ambassador, the floor is yours. You are still muted. Sorry.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. It is an honor to speak on behalf of the co-organizers of today's FPCI-GRIPS Virtual Public Forum. I would like to thank our speakers from Indonesia, the Philippines, and Japan for joining us today. I would also like to express its appreciation of GRIPS Tokyo to FPCI Indonesia, headed by Dr. Dino Paticharan, for all the work for today's webinar. From 2021, GRIPS and FPCI have organized webinars on various issues facing Japan and ASEAN, and co-organized seminars such as the AOIP Vision Group Conference in Indonesia. In an interview at the end of January, US Secretary of State, Mr. Marco Rubio, shortly after taking office, indicated that we are going to reach back to a point where we had a multipolar world. I thought this was a very suggestive remark. This year's FPCI-GRIPS Virtual Public Forum series would like to provide an opportunity to hear views of experts from ASEAN countries and Japan on how the ongoing changes in international affairs would affect the ASEAN region, and how Japan and ASEAN could cooperate to meet the emerging challenges. Now, today's theme is stability and cooperation in the maritime domain. While the European economy has stagnated through the protracted conflict in Ukraine, the weight of the Indo-Pacific region in the global economy is significant and has been the powerhouse of economic expansion. At the same time, certain countries exposed to the effects of ongoing strategic competition between superpowers, or those potentially affected by the dynamism of the global economy, are seeking to approach new groups for hedging various risks. Now, cooperation in various maritime areas and ensuring maritime connectivity are important for the stability and development of the Indo-Pacific region. heightened tension or instability in the South China Sea, the most important international maritime traffic route, are a cause of worry and concern. Now, blue economy and international cooperation to combat the threat of piracy, illegal fishing is also important. One of the areas of cooperation in ASEAN's AOIP, ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific, which was adopted in 2019, is maritime cooperation. From the Japanese perspective, maritime security and maritime cooperation are important pillars in the FOIP, Free and Open Indo-Pacific, proposed by the government of Japan in 2016. As part of FOIP, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, in collaboration with the Japanese Coast Guard, has been developing technical cooperation aimed at capacity building and human resources development of maritime security authorities in ASEAN countries. In this context, GRIP is proud of implementing an important program to train experts in the field of maritime security, the details of which may be explained by experts in today's webinar. To conclude, we would like to continue to focus on the importance of ASEAN-Japan cooperation in an evolving geopolitical landscape at the webinars to be organized in the future. We all welcome your active participation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your remarks, Ambassador. We would also like to acknowledge Ambassador Masafumi Ishii, former Japanese ambassador to Indonesia, who is joining this discussion today. Welcome, Ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I now invite our moderator to begin discussion. Calvin, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Joyce. Hello, everybody. Hello from Jakarta. My name is Calvin Ko, Executive Secretary of FPCI. Today's discussion is interesting. I'm speaking to you of audience who may or expert on maritime security. I'm not an expert on maritime security. I'm much focusing on ASEAN and also geopolitics, but when I'm trying to reflect myself before moderating this very distinguished panel, I'm thinking, actually, maritime security is the fundamental factor of international relation in Southeast Asia. Because Southeast Asia connected by waters. Even my country, Indonesia, 70% of our territories are waters. That is why maritime security is important, and that is why this public discussion will serve importance to you to help you to get more understand the state of the maritime security affairs in Southeast Asia and particularly in Indo-Pacific. This panel organized by FPCI and also GRIPS, representing Japan and Southeast Asia. Why Japan is so important? Because if we look to the data, Japan is the most contributors among the dialogue partners of ASEAN on maritime affairs. And Japan have a great interest to support ASEAN countries in managing the stability in Southeast Asia. Me, myself, have been working on regional survey since 2021. A little bit promoting. The name of the survey is ASEAN Perception, ASEAN People's Perception Survey, or APS. In our consecutive years of surveying the perceptions in the region, the conclusion is clear that all Southeast Asian have a common perception that the most trusted dialogue partners is Japan in all facets, particularly on maritime security issues. So Now, let's dive in to get more understanding about the Japan-ASEAN cooperation on maritime security, blue economy, and connectivity. But before we get more scratch more on the corporations, we need to acknowledge and also recognize the current world order, the current world situation, geopolitics. At FPCI, we see that the world is definitely going to the new directions. People are now talking about what kind of looks like of the next world order. This is not about making a new United Nations, but this is really thinking about what are the new features of the new international order and how this can affect the within our region in Indo-Pacific, and how does this affect the regime of law? And as you know, the regime of the regime of law of the seas, and as you know, the regimes of the law of the seas is UNCLOS, and that's related part of the features of the world order we are currently living in. And to discuss all of this, I will divide the discussion into two parts. So the first part is simply talking about the trends and about geopolitical developments, and also to give you updates about the maritime security agenda, where we are now and what has been discussed and what we are going to discuss. And the second round of discussion, we're going to peel more on the key initiative and the key strategy document that has been agreed by Japan and ASEAN. With me, I'm not alone. Joining with me, we have four panelists, which later, one will join us later. The first panelist I would like to welcome is Bapak Leonardo Teguh Sambono, Deputy for Food Affairs, Natural Resources and Environment, Ministry of National Development Planning, or Bappenas of Republic of Indonesia. Bapak Leo, thank you for joining us. And then the second speaker is from the Philippines, who will join us later, Professor Richard Haydarian, senior lecturers at University of the Philippines, Diliman. And then the third speakers joining us today, Professor Kentaro Furuya, professor at the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies, or GRIPS. Welcome, professors. And the last speakers is Dr. Yusuke Takagi, associate professors at the National Graduate Institute for Policy Studies. All right, so gentlemen, I'm going to go straight to the first questions. Again, the first round is all about talking about the trends, talking about the geopolitical dynamics that affect to the maritime security. I want to take a framework of 2023 to 2026. Why I pick up the framework? It's simply because in 2023, when Indonesia chair ASEAN, there's a new announced commitment that 3 years from that year, the code of conduct would conclude it. And I think that would be an interesting timeline. In the past, I will pick up that because we are right in the middle of that timeline. I'm not directly asking about the code of conduct updates because we're not discussing about the code of conduct update. But I want to ask you, during that time frame, what has actually been the trend in the maritime security affairs that actually not everybody watching for, and we should watching for, because if it is not, it would create another displeased situation for us in Indo-Pacific, particularly in Southeast Asia and Japan. I think the first to answer, I would like to offer the microphone to Professor Furuya, and then to Dr. Takagi and also Pak Leo. Professor Furuya, the floor is.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the host for inviting me to this very important and very interesting dialogue today. Greetings from Tokyo, everyone. My name is Captain Kentaro Furuya. I'm from Japanese Coast Guard, and I specialize in international law, maritime security, and Coast Guard policy. In 2023, during the Indonesia's ASEAN chairmanship, Japan and ASEAN reaffirmed their shared commitment to upholding international law, including the UNCLOS 1982. At the same time, ASEAN set a new target to conclude a code of conduct in the South China Sea by 2026. And 2 years have passed since then. Today, I'd like to talk briefly about emerging maritime security challenges Number two, strategic trends and key risks. And three, how Japan and ASEAN cooperation has advanced since 2023. Firstly, the emerging maritime security challenges. Obviously, there are three things that I need to mention. First is escalating tension in the South China Sea. Unfortunately, since 2023, the region has seen renewed friction, particularly between the Philippines and China. Incidents such as use of water cannons near Second Thomas Shoal and aggressive maneuvers and ramming by Chinese maritime assets have triggered regional alarm. And then somehow connecting to the first things, second is expansion of brazen activities. We are witnessing increased use of maritime militia and Coast Guard vessels instead of naval forces. These activities fall below the threshold of armed conflict, but are highly coercive. They often exploit legal ambiguities in international law, particularly the Law of the Sea Convention, highlighting the limitation of the current legal regime. And thirdly, relating to the code of conduct. Although ASEAN and China have agreed to conclude the code of conduct by 2026, substantive progress has been limited. And the COC, the code of conduct, as currently envisioned, would merely reaffirm existing international law without adding any enforcement mechanisms at all. As such, I think it would not add anything to the declaration of the code of conduct, code of parties, or the DOC, existing DOC, and risks becoming a symbolic gesture rather than transformative agreement. It may be time to consider a more programmatic, enforceable approach to managing tensions, not merely waiting to the code of conduct to be adopted. Second thing is that the strategic trend and key risks. I have two things under this item. One is rule of law and a threat. The principle of maritime order based on international law is under increasing pressure. Freedom navigation, peaceful dispute resolution, and respect for the sovereignty and sovereign rights under the UNCLOS must be defended correctly by like-minded actors, including Japan and ASEAN members. The second is that ASEAN centrality versus external involvement. As Ambassador correctly pointed out, there are many capacity building efforts by not only Japan but also other actors. While many ASEAN member states welcome support from external partners from all these countries, but concerns remain about increasing geopolitical rivalry and polarization. Strengthening the maritime cooperation must go hand in hand with preserving ASEAN unity and centrality, ensuring that ASEAN remains a driver of regional stability, not merely a theater for major power competition. Thirdly, the advancement between Japan and ASEAN nations. Firstly, I must say that the capacity building and the maritime domain awareness, Japan has actively supported countries such as Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia by providing patrol vessels, trainings, and technical assistance. The maritime domain awareness, the MDA, initiatives have significantly enhanced the coastal state ability to monitor maritime activities, strengthen both surveillance and law enforcement capacities. If I have time, I will discuss this issue more later on. And also the continued situational dialogue. The Japan-ASEAN Maritime Forum remains a vital platform for policy dialogue, principle sharing, and regional cooperation and coordination. In parallel, the Coast Guard dialogues continue in the Head of Asian Coast Guard Agencies meeting, or HAGCOM, and Coast Guard Global Summit. Through these dialogues, the participating organizations share the common value in upholding the rule of law and rule-based international order at sea. So in sum, we are entering the critical phase in shaping maritime order in the Pacific, and Japan should remain committed to the capacity building through the Japanese OSA, Offshore Security Assistance, and non-military ODA, Offshore Development Assistance, promoting dialogue based on international law, respecting the diversity and autonomy of ASEAN member states. Ultimately, the ocean should not be a source of conflict, but the shared global commons for cooperation and sustainability and peace. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, Professor Furia. Thank you. I want to circle back later on the code of conducts and also about another question related to maritime order we need to shape up in the region. I will go back to you again on that. But now I would like to now offer the microphone to Professor Dr. Takagi. What do you think about this? But I want to put another additional questions. Oh, by the way, welcome, Professor Richard. Welcome joining us in the panel. Dr. Takagi, when I hear Professor Furuya talk about the keyword is shaping maritime order in our regions, that's a challenge. I have a questions. What do you see the role of the European on that matter in this region? Right, there was an idea to open up a office of NATO in Japan. And somehow that idea is not there now on the table. But in Southeast Asia, the mood is somehow not. We don't have a specific unified answers on seeing a European role in this region. But I want to know the Japanese expectations on that also. Moving to you, Dr. Takagi, please.
Thank you very much for asking me a totally new question, which was out of my expectation, but thank you for that. And of course, thank you very much for the invitation for this great opportunity. And then let me tackle the tough question you gave me just now, the kind of role of European countries in Southeast Asia. On that issue, maybe we should start with the perception of Southeastern people toward European countries. Yeah, as a Japanese, we are so happy that many people maintain trust on the Japanese kind of presence in Southeast Asia. But next to Japan or sometimes European country had a better performance when it comes to trust among Southeastern countries. So in a sense, Europe has kind of asset in terms of a kind of social dimension. And from European side, it's very interesting to see the kind of overlapping interest on the concept of Indo-Pacific region, which is different from Asia-Pacific. And now EU has Indo-Pacific vision, and several individual European countries have Indo-Pacific strategy or Indo-Pacific guidance. The name is a bit different, but the very clear thing is that they are very much interested in this theater. And two reasons. One is, of course, assertive actions by the Chinese. And another one is, of course, economic opportunity. As Indonesia claimed when Indonesia was the chair, ASEAN is the epicenter of growth. That's so true. And so two things. One is a crisis, a kind of challenge, security challenge. Another is economic opportunity. And because of two different issues, they are very much interested in. So the challenge, or maybe the things we should think harder, is how to use this opportunity to maximize their interest in this region, not only security, but also economic collaboration. Because when it comes to the accumulated investment in Southeastern countries, actually European countries have lots of presence in this region. This region means East Asia, including Northeast Asia, Southeast Asia. And people are looking at kind of number one trade partners or number two trade partner, that kind of competition. But for that kind of statistics, I really want to highlight absolute number of the trade and the investment. Actually, absolute number of trade and investment increase. So in this context, number one or number two is one of the issues we should pay attention to. Another issue is that actually this kind of the competition of the trade and investment happen in the context of growing Asian economies or Indo-Pacific economies. So there are many places where we should think about a kind of deepening cooperation between or among the like-minded country. Here we may think about the kind of rule of law or value we are sharing together. So in that sense, maybe European countries have a bigger role than we expect usually. So that's my response to your kind of question. And then if I may go back to the original preparation, but actually Furia-sensei covered most of the things. And now I thought I might cover something about the Philippines, but now Professor Hedarian is here, so I will not talk about it either anyway. So now I just want to talk a bit about capacity building and maritime domain awareness issues, because here, by the way, unfortunately, I'm serving as a Maritime Safety Security Policy Program of GRIPS. And in this program, this year, we will celebrate actually 10th anniversary of this program. And this program is a special program for maritime law enforcement officers. And so far, we have almost 80 alumni from Indo-Pacific, many Indo-Pacific, 10 Indo-Pacific countries, not only from Southeast Asia, but from South Asia. And we accept the students not based on the kind of criteria of the priority of the country or something, but we prioritize the quality of the applicants. So based on that, we have many candidates from South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the more we manage this program, the more we realize Indo-Pacific is a kind of interconnected regions now, and we are sharing the similar issues, similar challenges, like especially non-traditional maritime security threats, including IUU fishing or maritime accidents like oil spills, or also kind of how to manage maritime agencies, because we have so many maritime agencies in one country, and how to overcome bureaucratic red tape is also a kind of common challenge of those who are working in these agencies. And these are common challenge we are considering, and we are learning from each other. And for the last 10 years, we are so fortunate to work with these people. Our students are not the students from the college, but actually these are the officers of the law enforcement agency. So they know actual issues in their office. And in this experience, we realize that we are really sharing a similar problem. And actually, problem is really good to see the opportunity, because sometimes we tend to talk about opportunity too much, but actually problem is a kind of driving force to work together, because there's no choice. The problem is acute, so we have to work together. And maritime issue is really a good area to think about cooperation, because maritime border is, of course, legally speaking, there is a boundaries, but physically speaking, it's almost impossible to cut the relationship at the maritime border. So we have to think about collaboration. And in that sense, capacity building is a very good opportunity to think harder about cooperation among countries in the Pacific region. Maybe I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Takagi. Before I go to Professor Hedarian, I want to speak directly to Pak Leo. Pak Leo, ASEAN Vision 2045 have the same deadline with Indonesian centennial goal, Indonesian 2045, and both are also promoting blue economy, right? And Indonesian economic development definitely have implications to the region development. And please tell us what are the key priorities of Prabowo administration in the next 20 years that should have regional support and should have dialogue partners' attention or even support as well, to make sure that we achieve the target that has been laid out. Paleo, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity from FPCI and GRIPS, and to share with you that during our within the Indonesia National Medium-Term Development Plan from 2025 until 2029 under the President Prabowo Subianto term, he has laid out one of the national priority, which is National Priority 2, which covers about the issue on how Indonesia can strengthen the state security defense system and encouraging national independence. And interestingly, it is not about only security and defense, but also it's how security and defense can also maintain and secure our own resources and help Indonesia to achieve self-sufficiency in food, energy, water, and also try to embrace new sources of development such as green economy and of course blue economy. And for that, Indonesia has also introduced Indonesia Blue Economy Roadmap 2023 until 2045, with the hope that our coastal and marine resources can be sustainably managed and secured through a knowledge-based blue economy to create social economy prosperity, ensure a healthy marine environment, and strengthen resilience for the benefit of current and future generations. So it means that we are not only thinking about now, but also we are thinking about the future generation, with the hope that every sectors that we have, such as established sectors in capture fisheries, aquaculture, marine-based manufacturing industry, trade, transportation, maritime logistics, maritime tourism, can also be complemented with emerging sectors such as renewable energy, biotechnology and bioeconomics, research and education, and of course, marine ecosystem conservation and services. We hope that by developing blue economy, this can secure Indonesian welfare and also maintain our security, because we also think that our security depends on how we can create welfare for our people. And for that, of course, we are going to develop many things. And right now, we are going to focus on how we can attract investment, expand our collaboration, and promoting emerging sectors by creating new opportunities, not only for Indonesian businesses, but also international businesses to collaborate to improve our added value from our resources. And for the current development is that we just yesterday launched, for example, our Ocean Center together with the UN network, Compact Network, with the hope that we can promote security, safety in our business, particularly in the ports, as well as in the connectivity, in the shipping, with the hope that we can improve not only competitiveness, but also secure the safety, and to make sure that this industry can also transform our transition to a more sustainable businesses. And we also work together with ASEAN community on how we can promote blue economy. And this is based on ASEAN declaration during the 38th ASEAN Summit in 2021, but ASEAN leaders declaration on blue economy, which become the basis for us in ASEAN to develop ASEAN coordinating task force on blue economy. So the initiative from Indonesia has been also echo the initiative at the regional level, particularly in ASEAN, on how we can create a blue economy as one of the source of growth for ASEAN. And for that, this will be this year will mark the second year, particularly the third year, on how we can we have been working together with the ASEAN members in promoting blue economy. And Malaysia this year will host it the second ASEAN Coordinating Task Force on Blue Economy, and also the third ASEAN Blue Economy Forum, with the hope that we can strengthen the enabling blue economy factors such as infrastructure, institutional setting, cooperation and capacity building, as well as sustainable investment and finance. We hope that by working together, we can also promote blue conservation, blue science, technology, and innovation, as well as improving our blue priority sectors. And the principle that we work on is on how we can not only use blue economy to create value, but also to promote inclusivity and sustainability. And with regards to maritime security, we hope that by working together, the concept of blue economy in ASEAN, in Indonesia, including in Indonesia, and also maritime security, we hope that there will be an interdependence and promoting cooperation among ASEAN nations, with the hope that by fostering economic interdependence, we can create more welfare for ASEAN members. and hope that this adverse in another way can support a better maritime security in ASEAN. So I will stop there, and maybe let's continue for another discussion.
Thank you, Paleo. Paleo, three of speakers have spoken, and three of the speakers, including you, talk about a collaborations, but also rivalry context. There's a rivalry context, geopolitical tensions, but you also mentioned about collaborations, working together, outreaching to investors on the blue economy context. And like Dr. Takagi said, we need to maximize the opportunities while we're having the tensions in the regions. My question to you, Pak Leo, I want to know your opinion, right? Not a Indonesian government opinion, or if you may also speak on behalf of the government. Is there any plan by Indonesian government to promote any collaboration or cooperation between on maritime security between US and China, or even Japan and China, right? Or any others forms of corporations on blue economy, not politics, that actually build up the idea of joint cooperation, collaborations, because the spirit of the AYP is actually turning tension to collaboration, turning security approach to development. Paleo, over to you.
Thank you. Actually, for Indonesia and ASEAN, our scope of cooperation with other partners, including our whether it's bilateral partners or multilateral partners, has covered several topics such as sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, blue carbon ecosystem protection. This is the one with Japan, with the government of Japan, and marine plastic and pollution reduction under ADB, and then innovative blue finance and business models, community engagement, education, climate change adaptation and resilience. We are working with UN Global Pulse, as well as supported by the government Australia in analyzing about sea level rise, as well as for cross-border knowledge exchange and technology development. And through the Indonesia Blue Economy roadmap, we have actually tracked several collaboration, including the first one is the Blue Economy, the Blue Food Assessment. We are working together with AREA, as well as with the EU delegation in Indonesia, and also with Stanford University and a private consultant company supported by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, with the hope that Indonesia can later on has a good basis on how it can develop blue food, as it is relevant for Indonesia as the largest archipelagic country in the world. And as we are now developing our new program under President Prabowo term, which is the school meal program, we hope that we can also streamline or mainstream the blue food into the provision of protein for our big program. And we do have some collaboration. For example, I also take up at the ASEAN level. ASEAN Blue Economy Innovation Challenge is one of the program that has been developed, supported by UNDP, ASEAN Secretariat, as well as Japan government. And blue carbon and finance profiling on how we can create blue carbon ecosystem, and to find innovative climate finance, and also to promote our scientific capacity has been also under collaboration between ASEAN members, Japan and UNDP. We start with the policy alignment, and then some technical training will be later on be devised. And Sea Blue is also launched under collaboration between Indonesia and also UNDP, and there is also part of a portion of Japan support, particularly in constructing new fishery ports, markets, and cold storage facility in small islands, but very rich in capture fish, such as in Morotai Island and Saumlaki in the eastern part of Indonesia. And cooperation on maritime security, of course, with Japanese, as you mentioned also under ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific, several whether it's related to lectures, capacity building, training, this scope of collaboration has been implemented not only in Indonesia, but also at the ASEAN level. So that's are some of the highlights that I can share with you on how the promotion of blue economy can also create an opportunity for us to collaborate with other partners.
Thank you, Pak. Yeah, thank you, Pak Ben. Thank you, Pak Leo. And I'm glad to learn that there are some cooperation that has been laid out by Pak Leo that actually a 1+2, right? Like area EU and then with Indonesia, that format, which I hope later, Pak, it could be later, the two would be China, Japan, China, US, or even EU with China or even with India. And this collaborations could even create more CBM development, which I hope so. I will turn back again to you on the development, but now I would like to turn the microphone to Professor Haydarian. Hello from Jakarta. Prof, long time not see you in Jakarta. Hope to see you in the CIFP this year, again in Jakarta. Now, I want to go straight to the questions that always you've been answering in TV or even in many interview. It's related to 3 points, and I want you to try to sum up. So number one is next year, the context is Philippines will chair the ASEAN, right? So you will be in the chairing table, and next year is the deadline for the conclusion of code of conduct. So I've been talking many in Jakarta, even in Kuala Lumpur. You know, it would be extended anyways, but the deadline is good for making people just come and talk, at least to continue the conversations. And the second point is in Kuala Lumpur, the AMM that they had just concluded. There's an open debate between Manila and also Beijing in the AMM, and the Wang Yi argues that you cannot go to the arbitration if you are not exhaust the legal instruments that has been laid out even in UNCLOS. And it's not exhausted from Beijing perspective, but you go directly to arbitration. That's why we cannot accept that arbitration. That's from Wang Yi's points that I watching or even following in Kuala Lumpur. And the last points that I want to ask you is about the Philippines' expectations on really maritime security. I know the focal point is on China. But do you see other factor other than China actually that become a Philippine concern regarding the stability in maritime domain in the South in ASEAN? I would say. Over to you, Professor Haydarian.
Thank you very much again for that. Well, not too many questions, and my apologies for joining you a little bit later than usual. As you can see, I'm still inside the studio for podcast, so I just had to transition, and I'm glad I clarified the time zone was Manila, not Jakarta, because we have a 1-hour time difference. So again, my apologies, but I think I caught enough of your earlier discussions to hopefully make sense in the broader sense of the panel. Well, first of all, I mean, maybe I'm not directly answering your questions per se, but let me put it this way. So the other day over Twitter, I got a lot of reaction when I posted this diagram that showed the countries that supported the Philippines arbitration case against China. Well, actually, I'm replying to you already. And I could see countries as far away as Lithuania, New Zealand, and then, of course, Japan, Korea, etc. But not a single ASEAN country was in that diagram. Now, we can have a debate about the position of different ASEAN countries. Indonesia, maybe Vietnam or Malaysia. But the reality is that as far as countries who have categorically, without any reservation, emphasize the finality and the binding nature of the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal Award, we don't see anyone from our region. So I jokingly said, and I was echoing the Mexican President Diaz, who in 19th century said, "Poor Mexico, too close to US, too far from God." I said, "Poor Philippines, too close to ASEAN, too far from its allies." But sarcasm aside, I think that shows you our challenge heading into next year when we're going to be the ASEAN chair. Because I think the challenge there is we have to obviously emphasize that, we feel alone, we feel strategic solitude, we feel we're actually being gaslighted, that sometimes we are seen as a troublemaker when in fact we're the one holding the line or at least calling things out. But at the same time, we cannot impose our position on the rest of ASEAN. We have to respect what is the median position in ASEAN, if not the mean position in the ASEAN. So finding that kind of balance, that Goldilocks balance, will be difficult. But our new foreign secretary, because we had a reshuffle in our cabinet recently, Secretary Manalo will be heading out to head our UN mission, and likely our mission once we join the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member soon. The new foreign secretary, she has been in charge of our bilateral consultative mechanism discussions with China. So she knows how to deal with China, including these very sensitive deals we had. So under one of the deals we did to make sure things don't get out of control, for instance, we have this kind of a notification mechanism whereby, if we're going to resupply our troops or folks in the West Philippine Sea or South China Sea, kind of will tell China just to make sure there's no crazy misunderstanding, like what happened last June when one of our servicemen lost his finger and there was a melee. So we have a very, I would say, capable person in charge of our DFA to deal with finding that difficult Goldilocks when it comes to ASEAN chairmanship next year. So don't worry, we're not going to impose our position on you and expect the rest of ASEAN to be with us 100%. But hopefully we're also not so alone sometimes as we feel, to be honest about this. I don't speak for the Philippine government. I speak as a Filipino who actually cares and loves ASEAN and feels quite frustrated, to be honest about it. I was at one of the ASEAN meetings earlier this year in Kuala Lumpur, and I haven't heard even a single mention of what's happening between Philippines or China, or any critical statement towards what's happening in that part of the world. So, but what makes the picture more complicated is in the past 3 months alone, I've been in probably 6 or 7 capitals in Europe. And one of the issues I keep on raising is, the concept of rules-based order is really coming under question from all different quarters. So while we have our European friends telling us in Asia, hey, support us on Ukraine, a victim of aggression, I think rightly so, many in Asia are asking, what about you guys? You guys, what have you done when there was an unprovoked unilateral attack against a Middle Eastern country recently? What are you doing about the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza right now? Just a few hours ago, Syria was just bombed, right? Their defense ministry was bombed. So I think we're in this very troubling situation whereby no one has moral ascendancy, or we're entering this kind of moral relativism that really undermines the rules-based international order in ways that I think is not good for any of us. We're all middle powers, whether you're Japan, Indonesia, or Philippines. We don't want the rule of the jungle. We want a rules-based order. And my fear is there's just too much hypocrisy and double standard for anyone to say that we are champions of rules-based order with a straight face. And going back to the Philippines, and this is why I am understanding towards the rest of the region, I'm not going to talk about Duterte Marcos thing. I just had a piece on Journal of Democracy, Philippines Dynastic Democracy. You can read that for the drama domestically. But just talk about our foreign policy. I believe the Philippines is still engaging in hedging, just like the rest of the ASEAN. But it's 50 shades of hedging. So if Cambodia is on one extreme, we're on the other extreme. I don't think we are fully aligned with the US against China in a new Cold War sense, but we may go in that direction if we feel that things are not moving in our way or things are getting crazier. And one reason we may finally get out of hedging and move into full alignment is the Taiwan issue. So it takes me 1 hour from here in Manila to go Taipei. It takes me, I don't know how many days to get there to Jakarta because there's very few direct flights. But joking aside, we're just too close to Taiwan to ignore the situation there. And in the past 2 years, you have this emergence of this trilateral, I call it JAFOS so that it rhymes with AUKUS, Japan, Philippines, US trilateral framework. And as we speak, there's more and more track 1.5. and also military operational coordination with Americans, if not the Japanese, on the Taiwan question. And I think this is what could make our relationship with China more complicated and add a new layer of tension to what is already a problematic relationship when it comes to the South China Sea disputes. And I think that could be a challenge next year in ASEAN if tensions in Taiwan, for instance, intensify, and then the Philippines tries to be neutral, but we cannot be neutral because Taiwan is just too close to us. So actually, the challenge for the Philippines right now is how can we develop a Goldilocks deterrence? Because on one hand, we're just too weak on our own to stand up to China. I mean, we don't even have a real fourth generation fighter. No offense to the Korean FA-50s, but they're no match for the fifth generation, sixth generation fighters that the Chinese are working on. And the reality is that our armed forces are nowhere close to providing that minimum credible defense posture. So realistically, while we're developing our capabilities, we need to leverage our alliances. And that's where the US comes in. And the Philippines, in one way to enhance our deterrence, is to host advanced American weapon systems, most notably the MRC, the Medium Range Missile System, Typhoon Missile System. And we want to host more of that. The problem is, and this is Security Dilemma 101, our attempts to strengthen our own defense capability is automatically seen as offensive by China. So now the challenge for the Philippines is, what are we operationally going to do in terms of giving Americans more access and putting more American weapons here to a point that we don't provoke China, but at the same time, we're strong enough to deter China? That's a very difficult operational question. And if we get it wrong, we might go entirely into a Cold War alignment mode. So as we speak, my contention is we're still hedging, but on the extreme side, other side of what Cambodia is doing, let's say, while the rest of ASEAN is somewhere in the middle. Now, I think the challenge also for the Philippines is that we do opposite of what Theodore Roosevelt advised. He said, speak softly, but carry a big stick. Our problem is that we speak loudly, but we have a very small stick. So that's why we have to work on that deterrence element, but we have to get it right. And that's going to be very difficult. And that's why I hope the rest of ASEAN do not call us as deputy sheriff of US or America's satellite state. That's not true. In fairness to President Marcos Jr., he's trying to multi-align. The reason why I've been spending more time in Europe than in US in the past year, aside from other factors, is because Europeans are interested in developing a relationship with us. I was just in Warsaw and Poland last week, before that in Brussels, Paris, and Britain. We believe also in multi-alignment. We also believe in diversification. But the problem is that realistically, how much can Europe offer to us? Because they're being pressured by the Trump administration to focus on the Ukraine issue so that the US can focus on this part of the world. And that haggling in itself is a very serious issue. My solution to that is minilateralism. For instance, why not Poland and the Philippines work with a much more developed middle power like Japan or capable middle power like Korea? Why not have this kind of minilateral, like-minded Europe-Asia coordinations on development of drones, missile defense systems, or whatnot, right? I think that's much more realistic in light of the fact that all of us frontline states have limitations and are bogged down in different ways. But I definitely see a lot of that because I know Poland is going to bring in K2 tanks from South Korea, has great relationship with Japan, but we have to be able to do more than that and work together. So in short, we need new squads, not only quads, but squads that involve some in Europe, some in Asia. As our friends in Eastern Europe always remind us, we're actually almost neighbors. We're only separated by Russia, if you're Japan, and Russia and China, if you're the Philippines, right? So actually, we're much closer to Poland than we imagine because China and Russia are so big. Let me just end on this point. I think ultimately, what we need to do is speak more together in ASEAN, but with that understanding that we really do not have a consensus and threat perceptions, and we don't have the same levels of entwinement with either US and China. But I think what we all can agree on is that we don't want a rule of jungle situation, and we're sick and tired of the hypocrisies of all superpowers. I think if we have that kind of positioning, especially in off-the-record, face-to-face discussion that our foreign ministers and leaders are going to have, I'm very optimistic about that. And for everything you want to say about Marcos Jr., I think President Marcos Jr. is one of the most experienced leaders in the region, if not the most experienced, maybe next to Mahathir when it comes to foreign policy. Why? You can Google his picture with Mao Zedong in 1974 when he was there with Imelda Marcos to normalize bilateral relations. That's how deep his foreign policy experience goes, right? So this is a guy who understands nuances. But this is a guy who also understands our limitations. But this is a guy who also wants to make sure we find some more credible common ground moving forward next year, while we also develop and diversify our relations with Japan, with India and Europe and Korea, not to mention New Zealand, France and Germany and UK, so that we're also not very dependent on US. So in short, it's a moving target. It's a difficult situation, and we're doing our best. And the most I can ask from the rest of ASEAN is don't judge us, support us.
Thank you. I want to continue with one question with you, Professor Haidarian, which I want to make sure that you still have faith with ASEAN. but here's a fair questions I want to ask you. You know, Philippines is the founder of ASEAN, right? And I talked with the ambassador. So one of your secretary, I forgot her name, but she were there as the clerk during the 1967 declaration in Bangkok, right? And she was here at FPCI, and we talked to her, and she told us how personal and how important ASEAN is for Manila in building regional order that which in favor towards our regions, right? And how personal relationship is actually deliver a lot in making sure the stability in the region. And you have mentioned also your president experience and exposure to foreign policy. So there's one notion that we all know, right? Many people says ASEAN, the consensus could turn into a veto power, but many people don't see that actually once ASEAN agreed on something, it's locked, right? No one can change that, right? And can never change, right? So next year your championship, I know not much can do only for a year of championship, but a lot of things that the people's await from Manila Championship, the code of conducts, the Myanmar questions, etc. Right? What actually what I want to ask you, what would be the not lowest denominator, but what things that Philippines can push on the questions of regional security that makes everybody locked in and have the same perceptions that we need to move forward, right? We're not talking about the high denominator because you have been mentioned that we have different perceptions, we have different interests, but what thing that Philippines can push next year and we locked in together? Professor Haidarian.
Yeah, very quickly. I didn't actually respond to your COC question, and then you can just Google. Oh, okay. Just on the COC issue, my position has always been very clear. Be careful what you wish for, because for a long time people are excited to get a COC. For me, my fear is we get a bad COC, a COC that actually strengthens China's position at the expense of international law. Remember, during the negotiations of the outline of the COC, this is 2018, China pushed basically for a veto power over two things: conducting military exercises with external countries within the South China Sea Basin. Also, that means Philippines and US cannot do balikatan exercises, or with Japan, no way. And second, allowing foreign companies to do drilling in the South China Sea. So that's why I said I actually rather have no COC if that's the kind of COC we're going to get. So be careful what you wish for. Let's not blindly push for COC. Second, call a spade a spade. If this COC, you see, a lot of us have been visiting China throughout the years, and China can build whole cities in a year. It amazes me that it's taking 20 years for us to finalize a piece of paper. So that means there's no will here. I think we have to understand that perhaps we're just being taken for a ride, if not taken towards a very perilous destination. That is why President Marcos Jr. has been echoing what some of us have been saying. Why not do a COC, a mini COC among us in ASEAN per se? I think when it comes to the position of Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Vietnam and Brunei, our understanding for exclusive economic zones and sovereign rights is far closer to international law than China's 9-dash line. It's as simple as that. So maybe we should start a conversation like that. And I won't be surprised if the Philippines will raise that issue, not to divide, but actually to unify ASEAN. Lastly, in economics, there's a term called middle income trap, meaning the policies that got you from poverty to middle income won't get you to the next level of development. My argument is that ASEAN is suffering from middle institutionalization trap, meaning the decision-making modalities that got us from, I don't know, a club of 5 big boys in the 1970s is not going to get us to the next level, which is a more robust regional body. What we have right now is that basically each country has a veto over sensitive issues. Now, having said that, ASEAN chairs also have 2 prerogatives. One is agenda setting. We can identify what will be the priority. So I remember when I was in Indonesia during the ASEAN summit, the priority was economic dynamism. The Philippines can choose South China Sea to be one of the key pillars. And second, we can issue a chairman's statement when there is no consensus on an issue and there's something sensitive that has to be raised. So we have some levers there. But what I want to see happen next year, I want to see Trump again back in Manila. He was in Manila for 2017. But I want to also see Xi Jinping. Based on my own conversation with our Chinese counterparts, it looks like President Xi Jinping may be interested to visit the Philippines because the Chinese are also worried that the Philippines might slide far into the American camp and the Taiwan question camp. As you know, Elbridge Colby, who leads the policy at the Pentagon, is already calling in the chips saying, are you with us in a Taiwan war scenario or not? The Australians are wavering, but I think Japanese and Filipinos, we have less room for wavering precisely because of tyranny of geography. So I'll keep it at that. Thank you very much again. I hope now I'm better answering your questions.
Thank you. That's very clearly answers my expectations of your answers. But thank you so much. Now I received a note that Pak Leo is leaving. Pak Leo, are you still there? If not, thank you so much, Pak, for joining us the conversation. Now I want to turn back to Professor Furuya and also directly to so one question like to Professor Furuya and also Dr. Takagi with the same questions. We have discussed ASEAN Vision 2045, AYP, right? And also the dynamics. I want a little bit shift the conversation. Pardon me if I'm a little bit off script because it's getting more interesting, and I want a little bit move to the framework. I look to the framework in one is most security premier frameworks East Asia Summit, and also the ASEAN Regional Forum, right? My foreign ministers last week in Kuala Lumpur called for ARF to have more role to even to prevent and even to promote CBM, right? To make sure the stability in the region. I want to get perspective from Tokyo. How do you sense or how do you see that the EAS and ARF should adapt, right? And as you know, the EAS is the only forum outside the UN when you can see the leaders of the US, Russia there, all the dialogue partners there sit down together and when ASEAN in driving seat. And Professor Haidarin, also want to pick up your question. I want to pick up your brain. How do you envision the adaptations of EAS and ARF? Are you echo with my foreign minister that needs to have more function on preventing or even promoting CBM in the region? Over to you, Professor Furuya, and also Dr. Takagi. Professor Furuya, you first.
Well, maybe I think the Professor Takagi is more specialist in this field. So can I give my mic to Professor Takagi? If it is okay. Sorry about that. Thank you.
I cannot pretend to be a free rider anymore. So my view on this issue, thank you very much for the question. Yes, to me, CBM start with a kind of common picture of what's going on in the field, I believe. So it's not about to make friends, but before to make friends, we should know what we are seeing together. And what I'm saying that we should share, we should enhance maritime domain awareness when we want to emphasize the role of the ARF or EAS. And in line with that, I want to go back to what the Philippines is doing for the last 2 years, which is called Transparency Initiative. And some say because of Transparency Initiative, Chinese behavior became very much rude, but actually the opposite is the case. China enhanced their activity in the EEZ of the Philippines before Philippine government changed the policy, whether they disclose information or not. And what changes here is actually Philippines change the policy, whether they disclose information or they just consume the information internally. And that's a choice of the government. And this choice was possible because of the enhancement of the MDA capacity of the Philippines. If you think about the 2012 in the Philippines Scarborough Shoal, actually Philippines sent a vessel, but it's almost impossible to monitor what's going on in the field. And actually Philippines sent a vessel, therefore China criticized the Philippines to militarize the situation. But now Philippines has Coast Guard vessels, and in addition to the Coast Guard vessels, they have now, even Prof. Hedari is not satisfied, but you have now jet fighters, which you can deploy to the South China Sea. So air capacity has been enhanced, and thanks to that, we have a better picture on what's going on in the field or in the ocean. And we should share this kind of information together before starting confidence building measures at the ARF or EAS. So I do believe we should disclose information as much as possible, and then we should share how evaluate the situation. And that's quite important. And that's a question maybe Philippines can raise to ASEAN friends, whether you want to disclose information, what China is doing in, say, Natuna or say in Lukonia Shore in Malaysia. And that's the thing we should discuss, maybe we should discuss at EAS. Like, for instance, Japan disclose information, what China is doing at East China Sea. And the way they disclose information may be something a bit different. Maybe Filipino way is more colorful than the Japanese way, but the information you can get is almost similar. And this kind of basic information should be shared before talking about confidence building measures. That's my response. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Professor Furuya, do you have something to add on this?
Well, if I may, in order to cut or develop the CBM or the confidence building measures, not only the kind of the practical operational issues like information sharing or the through the MDA or so on and so forth, but also it is necessary to maintain the dialogue among Coast Guard agencies or even the Navy, and also the joint exercises, joint patrols. Those professional experience will cultivate further in terms of the confidence among nations and institutions. And in terms of the MDA, well, it is based on the information sharing. However, due to the technical or the administrative or even the commercial issues, the information sharing is not really easy as it can be sound. So we need to talk about this issue or what is the bottleneck and then how we can solve these issues in order to find the best way to, for the confidence. And well, the joining the seminars, human resource development is another issue. Not only the practical issues, but also the thinking about what would be the best solution from the past examples, the past cases. Even we understand that it would not be fully applied in the current context. However, there must be some hint in the past cases. That is why we do the Maritime Safety Security Policy programs as well as the other JICA programs, Japan International Cooperation Agencies, hosted programs in Japan and in other countries. I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Hedarian. I want to add another one layer of questions. I'd like to add up more layers and layers again, and then I'll try to circle back to the others. At FPCI, we are very close with the late Professor Hashim Jalal, the fathers of Ambassador Dino, who's championed the UNCLOS, right, the law of the seas. And there's one, his idea that we are trying to keep it alive or even to continue to discuss. He's consistently telling the ideas that one point that not regulated in UNCLOS, but actually should be regulated, is about a military exercise in the economic exclusive zone. So it should be regulate about the maritime military exercise in the EEZ, right? So I just want to pick up your brain, Professor Hadarian, and also Professor Furia, Dr. Takagi. What do you think about that idea? And you know, China is part of UNCLOS anyways, party to UNCLOS as well. Over to you, Professor Hadarian, about the EAS, ARF, and also Professor Hashim ideas. And then I'll circle back to the others, and then I'll open up to the public questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to the ARF shortly, and of course, Yusuke-san is correct that the Philippines has come a long way in the past 10 years. We basically got back to supersonic age after a while, not having even a single operational fighter jet. But what I'm saying is that you're up against China, which is building all sorts of things so fast. So I think everything is relative, right? So I think kudos to the Philippines. In the past 10 years, we have come a long way, but you're up against China, scale and quality and quantity, everything going there. Now, going back to the issue you raised, well, we know that for a fact that countries, I think, as varied as not China, Iran, Brazil, I think even India, for instance, have certain more restrictive understanding of what could take place in their exclusive economic zone by other external powers, particularly the issue of military activities. My sense is I'm worried in our context because what China claims, for instance, as its exclusive economic zone is almost within our exclusive economic zone. In fact, almost within our contiguous zone, right? So you have a situation whereby what is China's shoreline? Is it Hainan? Is it Fujian? Or is it Tito Island, right? Because if you follow China's Forsha notion, okay, their 9-dash line, whatever, but they have a new notion, Forsha, which is, okay, those little islands are not islands per se, per relevant provisions of UNCLOS, but they constitute together collectively some sort of island. Now, if you project another 200 nautical miles, you're basically knocking at my door in my apartment in Manila, right? So what? I cannot even, you see what I'm saying? So that's why, while I am, I said varied, because it's not like India, Brazil, China, Iran are necessarily the same kind of countries, right? Some are more responsible than others. Let's just put it that way. But I fear the slippery slope there, right? That with the situation we have, I'd rather not get into that discussion. I think we have very clear provisions on right of innocent passage. Your warships can pass through us, even within our contiguous zone, last time I checked, but they should not be pointing their intelligence gathering equipment and guns at us. And they should not turn off their identifiers, right? So for me, I think the right of innocent passage as it stands should be good enough, because I fear opening a Pandora's box once we go into that kind of, I would say, more maximalist interpretation of literal states, idea of what should happen within their maritime entitlement zones. I think the Philippines was unilateral in its decision to take the case to the international court. No one in ASEAN supported us. Our friends in Cambodia enthusiastically criticized it, to put it mildly. But guess what? We gave everyone a chance to defend their rights. Even you guys in Indonesia, in North Natuna Sea. Because of us, our decision to take China, without your support, now you can get that document say China has no business claiming fishing rights, traditional rights in Natuna Sea, right? And same thing for Malaysia and Vietnam. Now, speaking of the ARF and relevant mechanisms, I remember when we were first discussing all of these ASEAN mechanisms, ARF mechanisms during the college days. I'm not that old, but it seems like it's an ages away. I mean, if you look at the war in Ukraine, the war between Iran and Israel, my goodness, these were almost unthinkable just 5 years ago, right? The things we're seeing today are just so crazy that makes you wonder, how long can we keep it in our part of the world where we have even bigger militaries and economies and resentment politics, ressentiment, as Nietzsche and Rousseau would put it. So I'm very worried for our region. And my sense is, going back to my argument of middle institutionalization trap, I really think we should go big or lose home. Because if we don't level up our institutions, we're going to risk not only our exclusive economic zone and rights, we might risk regional stability and order in ways that we're seeing in Europe and in the Middle East nowadays. So maybe I'm a bit pessimistic. But I think I've seen enough in the past 3 years alone for me not to be complacent at all and to feel that we in ASEAN have to level up. The reason why probably I'm the last man who still loves in ASEAN in Manila, because to be honest, you talk to a lot of Manila-based experts, they say, forget about ASEAN, let's just join Team US or whatever. The reason is because I know how bad it is not to have ASEAN. Guess what? That's what Middle East is, right? That's what post-Soviet space is. They don't have anything like ASEAN. But it would be a tragedy if we don't live up to the moment and to the challenges of the moment. And I think that is where we are a victim of the fact that we are today mostly populated by either authoritarian, non-responsive, or mediocre leaders. Where are our great statesmen? I'm not necessarily a fan of everything Mahathir or Lee Kuan Yew or definitely Marcos Sr. said, but once upon a time, at least we had these great leaders. What we need now is great leaders and great institutions. And to be honest, both are missing, just as the situation escalates. Having said that, thank you very much for inviting me, because the reason why I always love talking to you folks in Indonesia and also in Japan is that at least there's an effort. And I think in fairness to Indonesia, from Pak Dino, Pak Marty, right? We have all sorts of brilliant diplomats and thinkers, strategic thinkers in Indonesia who are really doing their best to keep things on an even keel. And of course, the great Sir Jalal, right, who did fantastic for our region. I think the best way to honor his legacy is to continue this fight, this struggle for autonomy fight that we should have based on rules-based order, but also based on solidarity and regional integration. So in short, go big or go home, or lose home, sorry. Go big or lose home. That's the dilemma we face nowadays.
Thank you so much, Professor Haydarian. You know, now I'm categorized you into a group of tough love ASEAN. I mean, you have a tough love to ASEAN, and that's good. Vitamin
You say
for
cariño brutal.
the ASEAN, right?
Yeah. You say cariño brutal. I mean, Espanol, like it's a tough love, right? It's brutal, but it's love.
There you go, right? Tough love ASEAN. Now, I open up to the public, and we got directly the most favorite ambassador at the time, I think today in Indonesia, Ambassador Masafumi Ishii. You got very popular. I was in the college when you are here in Jakarta, and we all know you, ambassadors. So I want to give the microphone to Ambassador Ishii. Please, Ambassador Ishii, you can ask anything you want. Ambassador Ishii?
Yes, can you hear me?
I think you're still muted, Ambassador.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, great. Thanks FPCI and thanks GRIPS for organizing this. And it's great to see you again, Haydarian. I saw you in NHK. Yeah? So my question is specifically about arbitration. As you are talking about next year, Philippines will be a chair of ASEAN, and also next year marks the 10th anniversary of the announcement of the arbitration result. So how about doing it again? Because I think you have already achieved a lot of things in the legal terms, but important thing to do this again is to keep it within the radar scope of the interest of the world, particularly in Europe. And then I think last time we did it, it lasted for 3 years. And then we succeeded in keeping it in the agenda of many countries for 3 years. So it makes sense after all these things happened to do it again. And then I think if we do it carefully, we know the result. So the most difficult thing is who is going to raise it. I think it's a bit too much to ask the Philippines to do it again. So maybe some other ASEAN countries should do it, either independently or collectively. Those claimants in relation to South China Sea, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam is a little bit too much. Huh? Maybe the Philippines, I think the Singapore is happy to join. So as a chair, do you think the Philippines can organize things like that? I think doing arbitration again is very important, because that also strengthens our position of relying on the rule of law, whatever hollow it may sound. So that's my specific question. And maybe the second small suggestion is about gray zone activities. whenever we say gray zone activities, we feel like it's not illegal. Huh? It is illegal, I think. We call it gray zone activities simply because it's short of the use of force. So I think whenever you use a gray zone activity, you may as well say that those illegal activities. I think that clarifies the nature of the activity. It's gray zone simply because it falls short of use of force, so you cannot respond by using force, but it's still illegal. So I think that clarifies the legal nature of what they are doing under the gray zone activity. Sorry, I spoke too long. Thank you.
I think you're on mute, Calvin.
Calvin, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I'm muted myself. Sorry. So thank you. Now, before I give it to Professor Haydarian, I want to read out one questions for Professor Furui and Dr. Takagi. You can answer it after Professor Haydarian. This question from Celine from Indonesia. The question is, what do you think that Japan look most next year? So specifically look most next year to cooperate with Japan, to cooperate with ASEAN. What would be that in the next year, particularly when Philippines take the chairmanship of ASEAN? Professor Haydarian, you can start, and then the microphone over to Professor Furui and Dr. Takagi. Professor Haydarian, you can answer the question of Ambassador Isi.
Thank you very much again, Ambassador, for that great question and beautiful background, although I think that's animation or whatever you are. I hope you're having a good time. Thank you for those wonderful questions. I mean, well, I mean, as we speak, actually, the relevant agencies in the Philippines have suggested that we may indeed pursue additional arbitration cases against China with respect to, for instance, environmental damage that they're creating. So basically, what happened in 2016 was, as Churchill put it, just the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new chapter, right? So now it's about enforcement. And in fact, there are other proposals that we can even go for reparations by calling for freezing of Chinese state assets abroad. Or, for instance, certain Chinese companies who may have been involved in illegal activities or ecologically damaging the Philippines Exclusive Economic Zone, let's say CNUC or CNPC, we can push for their asset seizure, for instance. This is a proposal of not mine, but people like, for instance, Justice Antonio Carpio. And you can check my 10 different podcast discussions with him on this issue. But obviously, there's risk to that, right? And as we speak, our friends in China have been warning us not to touch that element, that, that would be a nuclear option. If we go for another arbitration case, we will respond aggressively. I just think timing may not also be perfect next year, because it will be much easier to say, oh, look at these Filipinos, troublemakers, now abusing their chairmanship. So, and remember, we are only chairman next year because Myanmar could not become, right? So the point is, I think the Philippines will be slightly more conservative than some would think, however you are much more moderated. But having said that, that should not stop us from credibly threatening China with additional arbitration. But this is a Rubik's Cube, right? You cannot just do arbitration without doing all other things. All other things means consulting with the rest of ASEAN. Maybe we'll not get Cambodia on board, but maybe we can get a little bit more out of, I don't know, Prabowo than we got out of Jokowi when the arbitration came out. Maybe, Anwar will not just attack the West for their hypocrisy in Gaza, maybe a little bit point out the hypocrisy of his friends in Moscow or Beijing too, right? Maybe we can talk to our friends in Singapore about the legacy of Lee Kuan Yew and give us options and make sure we're not just going to. So we have to do that. My suggestion is, as you know, we Filipinos have also Spanish background. So why not talk to Latin American countries, other global South countries? As you can see, they're not even in our radar. It's all about Asia, Europe. What about Latin America? What about some of the Latin American countries who are actually also dealing with China's illegal fishing activities, right? Because they go all the way, I don't know, to Argentina, Peru, whatever, Chile. So why not reach out to those countries too? So, and then operationally, you have to be ready for responses. What if China responds aggressively, economically through coercion, supply chain coercion, or militarily? Then that means you have to coordinate it with the Americans and other allies to make sure we can respond. So It's going to be a multidimensional, multifaceted response, and it's not just a one-off thing to make sure we can get something out of that. All I'm saying is that I hope the rest of the region appreciates that by taking this risk and action, we gave them leverage. That now Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam can come out and say, see, 9-line has no basis in international law. What are you claiming in my exclusive economic zone? We gave you that thing, right? We gave you that leverage. So we hope there's some sort of gratitude instead of gaslighting, right? For what we are doing. But yes, the next round, ideally, Vietnam would have been our closest ally and friend. But it will take us 2 more hours to discuss Vietnamese politics in the last 2 years, because Vietnam is going through some internal changes, which is beyond the purview of this discussion. But anyway, I have a new book on this 50 Shades of Hedging thing. Lastly, on the gray zone, yes, indeed, Ambassador, we are in the grayest of the gray zone spectrum. I mean, someone lost a finger, could have lost the head, right? So we're actually in a very dangerous situation. But you know what's the dilemma for the Philippines? The Americans want to help us more than we want the Americans to help us, because we want to have ownership of this issue. Since last year, the Indo-Pacific Command is saying, do you want us to go along with you during these patrols? And we keep on telling them, don't do that, because if you do that, we look like your puppets. So let us do this. So far, Ambassador, we're doing our best through Transparency Initiative and also through independent resupply missions to show to the world we have ownership of these issues and we're fighting for this. But yes, realistically, the US has to be just over the horizon, just in case our Chinese friends get funny ideas. At the end of the day, we're not here to make enemies out of China. They are our brothers, our neighbors, but it has to be truly mutually respectful, and it has to be on a certain playing field, which unfortunately we do not have right now.
Thank you. Now I would like to go to Professor Furuya, Dr. Takagi on the questions of what Japan looks most for next year chairmanship.
Before moving to that issue, I'd like to clarify some of the overseas issues. In the EEZ, the coastal states have only the sovereign rights over natural resources, and full stop. You have rights over natural resources, but nothing other than that. So the military exercise is not relating to the natural resources, then it is under freedom of navigation. It is not right of innocent passage. Right of innocent passage applies only within the territorial sea or archipelagic waters. So it is a matter of freedom of navigation, more freedom. So in that case, it is highly challenging for you to demonstrate that the military exercises within the EEZ is prohibited under international law. So if you do not have a legal basis, so your claim, your argument is very weak. So you need to be very careful about that. And also but in case that the military exercises involved occupation of, even temporary, using the part of area of EEZ of other nations, then there must be kind of the dialogue or the communication prior to the military exercises. For example, the live fire drills. In that case, in order to ensure the safety of the navigation, the area is designated in prior, and then the ships are not supposed to enter into that area. In that case, there must be communication between the coastal state and the state of the flag state of the military or the warships. Other than that, the military exercises are under freedom of navigation. That is general understanding. Of course, I understand that some states are not really, the same interpretation. But if you read plainly the Law of Sea Convention, this is what you will read. And gray zone situation, thank you very much, Ambassador Ishii. And I'm very afraid to talk about this issue in front of you because you are one of the very specialists in this field. But we have to, again, read international law carefully. Sometimes the gray zone operation is not a violation of international law, but it is uncomfortable for the coastal state, but sometimes it is not a violation of international law. So, for example, in case of Japan, the Senkaku Islands, the intrusion of the foreign asset into the territorial sea, and then the stopping and then doing some other, the activities that not relating to the passage. is illegal under international law. And that is the stance of the Japanese government. It violates the right of innocent passage. However, if the Chinese Coast Guard ship just entering into the EEZ, close to low tide elevation, which is a part of the seabed, then this is not a violation of international law. If you argue the use of force, then maybe it is threat of use of force if it is so perceived from the coastal state. Other than that, I think it is highly challenging to demonstrate that this is the violation of international law, particularly Article 4 of the UN Charter, use of force. And then, well, the cooperation among the Coast Guard agencies, particularly the ASEAN nations, that is good. I think the the advancement. Recently, we do many cooperative achievement. For example, the last month, just last month, there was the joint exercise in Japan and Kagoshima with Japan and the U.S. and the Philippine Coast Guard. And then we'll have another, the exercises in ASEAN region. Our training vessel Itsukushima visited some of the Indo-Pacific region countries. Now I think she is approaching Singapore after leaving from India. So this kind of, the activities will advance further cooperation, international cooperation. I think the time is almost spent, so I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now I'll move to Dr. Kagi. You want to add something before we
thank you very
move
much.
to the closing remarks?
Right, I need to be very quick, but actually I have 3 points. First is Japan's expectation towards ASEAN chair of the Philippines. I think Philippines can go back to the kind of traditional promotion of rules-based order in the world. Actually, yeah, not only arbitration, actually UNCLOS itself, Philippines and Indonesia can claim the kind of ownership. And some say, the rules-based international order is a kind of Western fabrication, but it's totally wrong. If we think, if we go back to the history of the UNCLOS making, it's a kind of a collaboration of the newly independent states, including actually China. But actually, the Philippines and Indonesia worked very hard to make UNCLOS. So we can go back to that kind of history, and then Philippines in cooperation with Indonesia promote itself as a kind of the founder of rules-based order. And arbitration is one of the example. That's first point. And second point, in line with that, I think Philippines and Indonesia again can advance the kind of achievement in that field, like limitation maritime boundary between Philippines and Indonesia. And Indonesia is doing a very good job to deal with the case with Vietnam too. So in that way, these two countries are promoting rules-based order. And this is the kind of things we can highlight at ARF or EAS as a kind of the contribution to the regional order or actually world order. The third point, I really appreciate the comments by Ambassador Ishii about gray zone. And this is one of the issues maybe Philippines can raise at the ARF or EAS, like how to understand the gray zone, and how to create common understanding of kind of illegal activity and kind of how to say, illegal, but as Furia Sensei said, a kind of nuanced way to interpret. But the more we know the situation, the narrower the kind of gray area can be. So gray area is really flexible things. And here we should expect more from the diplomat efforts. And ARF or EAS can be a good platform. And if the Philippines and Indonesia can raise this issue at the arena at ARF or EAS, regardless, they can reach to the conclusion. But anyway, they can raise the issue. And this is actually one of the things that we should highlight, actually, because with all respect to the late Hasim Jalal, the one thing we should care about is change of Chinese behavior, gray zone activity. When Hasim Jalal discussed international law, gray zone was not that rampant. So we should not, use this kind of historical discussion into the contemporary issue. And this contemporary issue can be discussed in a public arena at EAS or ARF, where we can see the voice of the people. Also, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Takagi. we are running out of time, but I have one shot to ask everybody, not asking, actually to let you to give a closing remarks. But I try to scroll up and scroll down with the question coming through from 136 or 144 who are watching in Zoom alone. And I catch something that we have not yet to discuss. It's a question from our friends from Cambodia about the joint development. And the joint development, something that I want to know about your opinion about this, particularly if we in ASEAN. And I want to ask also each of you to get your closing remarks while you are answering and discussing about the joint development questions. I'll start from Professor Furia and then Dr. Takagi and then Professor Haydarian. Over to you.
Well, I think the joint development is a good idea to develop the, at least the mutual understanding and then the confidence. So I think it is a good way to start to argument for this particular year even. Problem is that how do you expect each other? If you have technical advancement, then you contribute in that way. How do you consolidate all your capability and the how do you say the to pursue this joint development? This would be another practical issue. But the idea itself is very great. I think that then there was something that in between Malaysia and Indonesia or Malaysia and Vietnam. So I think this will be the basement, the base argument for joint development. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now moving to Dr. Takagi, please.
Okay, now really very quick. So 2 points. Transparency is a key to promote joint development. That's one. And second issue is about the new context to think about this kind of development, carbon neutral things. So we have to think about sustainable development. In 2 ways, we have to make the project quite open and accountable to the world. That's my response to that question. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Professor Haydarian.
Well, I mean, for me, it's hard to talk about joint development agreement or anything along those lines unless your boundaries are clear. So I think maritime boundary demarcation should be a priority here. And that's one thing that Philippines and Vietnam have been working on. And we have had success with you guys, Indonesia and the Philippines. So hopefully what we also see between Vietnam and Indonesia. So we have at least some good examples to work on. But the first thing we have to do is to demarcate exactly where our boundaries overlap and where our boundaries end. And exactly that's why we needed to have that arbitration, because China's boundaries are not very clear to me. What are the exact coordinates of the 9-dash line, 10-dash line, 11-dash line? It's precisely that vagueness that actually does not help us to deal with this issue. But in the meantime, as I said, we shouldn't wait for China forever. And maybe we among ourselves in ASEAN should do that. Last thing on the confidence building, ARF and all, I'll be again honest, I think some of us want to have confidence building over confidence building. Why? Because there are trust issues. I think if you talk to some people behind the scenes, they're saying, I'm not sure if I say this to this country X in ASEAN, it doesn't go straight to Beijing, right? Or vice versa, doesn't go to the White House. Do you get what I'm saying? I think we're unfortunately feeling the winds of the Cold War. And that is why we need to have confidence building over confidence building, or some sort of more minilateral arrangements, perhaps, to be able to more effectively deal with that. But having said that, thank you so much again for this fantastic discussion. And I definitely learned a lot, and looking forward to learn more from our great guests and speakers.
Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to Professor Furuya, Dr. Takagi, Professor Haydarian. I do not dare to sum up every point that they have thrown in. It's a very excellent conversation, but I want to put up some points that maybe would even be instilled in your mind. In my view, ASEAN is at her moment with the current global context. I'm always saying, in my view, that the world is becoming highly personalistic and very figures-led. And remember, ASEAN has been and always been figures-led organization. That's why I'm echoing what Professor Haidarian said, the importance of the great leaders and the great institutions. And we hope that ASEAN leaders can step up in the lead up in the next few years. Remember, in the next 2 years, Singapore will chair the ASEAN 60 years of ASEAN, and this year is 8 years of the UN. So a momentum to show how ASEAN can be the example of rules-based promoters, but also we shape, right, and we continues to norm set, right, the region. And I'm echoing and using the term of my chairman, Ambassador Dino, at the FP Live interview. ASEAN has becoming oasis of stability, right? And East Asia Summit, ASEAN regional framework, all the mechanism should be continue to be adapted. And we hope that the ASEAN Vision 2045, which also have a strong emphasis on strengthening the role of ASEAN Secretariat here in Jakarta, and can be more strengthened. And the 11 dialogue partners can also play more roles, or even widening more, get more dialogue partners in. Like Turkey is waiting for long, become the dialogue partners of ASEAN. Nordic countries are also the same. So the ASEAN is in its momentum, but needs greater push from the leaders itself. We hope that next year, with the under leadership, this year we have a strong leadership of Malaysia, Prime Minister Anwar. Next year with the President General Marcos, and then the next 2 years with the Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, who have been talking about ASEAN, or have been introducing his thinking and ideas about ASEAN across the region or even across the globe. Thank you so much for hearing and participating. Very enthusiastic. I see a report from the team. The numbers of who are watching is steady, right? Steady in 130 pluses, even in the YouTube also study up. And it shows the interest in the region, and the conversation is so live. Thank you so much. Hope you join again FPCI-GRIPS public discussion, and any FPCI or any GRIPS discussion, please tune in. Thank you so much. See you on another public discussion of FPCI-GRIPS. My name is Calvin. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Terima kasih.
Thank you, Calvin, for
much.
moderating today's session. And thank you to all the speakers for sharing your incredible insights. Before we wrap up the event, I would like to invite the speakers and everyone for a short photo session. On my count, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone. It has been a fruitful discussion, and I'm sure the audience found this session interesting and highly informative. Today's event is available for rewatch on FPCI's official YouTube channel as Secretariat FPCI. Please remember to fill in the Google form link sent in the chat box to get your e-certificate for today's forum. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to today's discussion. You can follow our social media handles for more information about our activities, events, and programs. Also, stay tuned to our next FPCI-GRIPS virtual public forum via Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter at FPCI Indo. See you at the next FPCI event and enjoy the rest of your day.